Hello and welcome once again to Kitaabi Baatein. I'm Abhishek, also known as wale Bhaiya. My guest today is noted author and journalist Deep Halder, and he's here to talk about his latest book, Being Hindu in Bangladesh. So, at the very outset, while I have not done a video review of it on my channel, but at the very outset, I would like to say it is definitely a must read book. Deep has been a journalist for about 20 years, and he has written a lot on issues related to religion, politics, and caste. And this book actually tells you in detail without having any color or bias about what exactly is happening to Hindus in Bangladesh. So, Deep, thank you very much for joining the podcast. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you, Abhishek. Honor to be here.
Okay. So, Deep, let's start by this book. So, a very basic question I would like to start with: why this book? I mean, we are when it comes to religion, we are usually obsessed with Pakistan, what's happening in Pakistan, and the condition of minorities there. And it's not just Hindus but other minorities as well who are unfortunately facing a tough time. Why this book? What's the inspiration behind writing a book on being Hindu in Bangladesh?
Okay, let me. I think the answer to this came in the review, one of the reviews of the book done by our common friend Utpal Kumar from First Post,
Yeah.
where in the review he mentioned a line. He said that both me and my co-author Abhishek Biswas, we have the refugee blood in us. So that's what Utpal found a very authentic thing about the book, that it came from two writers who were sort of sons of refugees. So when I if you remember my first book, Blood Island spoke about the massacre of Hindu refugees in a tiny islands in the Sundarbans during 1978-79 by the then left front government. Now,
Yes.
those were refugees who came from what was East Bengal, and then which became East Pakistan after India was partitioned, and later in 1971 became Bangladesh. So not after it became Bangladesh, but intervening period of say 1947 to 1950s 60s, hordes of Hindu refugees kept coming to West Bengal, and they were dispatched to various other parts of the country, mostly in central India. And then these bunch of refugees came and settled in the Sundarbans. So that's and what happened to them. How one of our own state governments, the horrific
Yes.
massacre that they
Yes.
unleashed on them. So that was my first book. In my second book, Bengal 2021, an election diary, basically looked at uh, Bengal, because I had left Bengal 21 years ago to do my journalism in Delhi. And so it basically looked at what are the issues of during the election. It was a closely contested election, as you know, the, BJP between BJP and Trinamool Congress. And I was looking at Bengal that I knew and the Bengal that is now. And even during that, I wrote about the refugee experience. That is there a Hindu refugee vote bank on this side of the
Right.
border, on West Bengal, and and is it and how does that play out during elections, and particularly the 2021 election. So
Sure.
finally, when that book also came out, I thought that why not go back to the source. I mean, I'm talking about Hindus who came from what is now another country,
Yeah.
but which was once a part of India, and my
Absolutely.
own family came from there. But particularly, why this book is, I was sitting in a newsroom, India Today, which whose online division I used to hate, and I during Durga Puja in 2021, I I I. I I didn't come home to Calcutta like most Bengalis do. I could not come home because there was work and all that. Sitting there, I saw that there is Durga Puja violence during Durga Puja across Bangladesh against Hindus. Okay, there
Yeah.
was a piece of fake news that a copy of the Quran had been placed at the feet of a statue of Lord Hanuman, and the message was spread through WhatsApp. And then anti-Hindu riots broke out in Kumilla first, Kumilla district, and then across various districts of Bangladesh. So that stirred something in me, and my co-author, who I happen to know since my first book, he's a professor and he's also a researcher of the partition period. So I told him, I called him up and I said, we keep talking about going to Bangladesh. Why not make a trip to Bangladesh and see for ourselves that how Hindus are there today? Now, I have been to Bangladesh before with my father, who used to go there often. to sort of as a visiting professor to Dhaka University, etc. And
Oh,
he had
wonderful.
friends there on that side of the border, so he used to go there often. I used to accompany him, but then in my adult life, I had never been to Bangladesh. So Abhishek and I went. We planned a trip together, and we actually did not just stick to Dhaka, where most people who go to Bangladesh from Bengal go. But we actually went all the way to Noakhali and Kumilla, places where the violence had started, and we met the victims a year from that violence,
Noakhali
and
is
so
famous for the violence during the time
of
of independence.
1946. Yes, yes,
Yes,
yes. So that's then while coming back, I started jotting down that if I were to sort of, so it was around a 10 a week 10 days tour. So we went to several places. So Abhishek had his interest areas, I had mine.
yeah,
We went to several places, and then while coming back, I was jotting down ideas for maybe a thesis, sort of, because he's an academic. So he said, "You
yeah.
will write an academic paper." So basically, it started off like that, but then it became it's as it began to take shape, it became a book, and it became also a personal journey for me and Abhishek, because it was not just the book. There's something that kept drawing us to Bangladesh, and I would go, and around the same time, I think I sort of started writing for the print. So I started covering, in a sense, as various aspects of Bangladesh for the print. So the two things fed off each other. So hence the book.
So the Pakistan and Bangladesh, they both emerged on the world map due to differing conditions. One was due to religious, more of religious reasons, religious fundamentalism, and one because of the language nationalism to an extent, we can
Yes,
say. That was the
yes,
seed which, the seed which sowed
yes,
the dream of Bangladesh. Two
yes.
differing viewpoints.
Right.
Not wrong to say that, in both cases, Hindus were at the receiving end
Okay,
because
so I think the
they suffered
first thing,
violence in both
yeah.
cases. So how do
So
you see that the motives might have been different, and but Hindus were at the same in both the situations? How do you see that?
okay, so firstly, we have to remember that Bangladesh was Pakistan,
Pakistan.
right? Bangladesh was East Pakistan. It was the same country,
Yes.
separated by thousands of miles, but and sort of the India separating them geographically, but it was Pakistan.
Yes. Yes.
Now, when East Pakistan decided to break away from West Pakistan and become an independent country, it was there were several reasons, but I think the reason that was fronted was that it's over language, the supremacy of language over the import the it was a kind the love of language, not supremacy, the love of language
Love of
over
language. True.
culture over any other marker, any other identity marker, right? So in that struggle, the Hindu and the Muslim came together,
Yes.
and thereby Mujib's great declaration. I have said this, that even if you go to the VIP lounge of the Bangladesh visa issuing office, you will see that there is a quote by Mujib, which I have quoted in the book, that this is a country
Yes.
that belongs to neither Hindus nor Muslims. This is a country that belongs to anybody who calls it their country,
Anybody. It
right?
belongs to no one. Neither Hindu. It belongs to everyone who considers it
Everybody who
as
calls it
their
their own.
homeland.
So, and that's the stated sort of position of of his daughter, who's now the Prime Minister, Sheikh
Yes.
Hasina.
Sheikh Hasina.
So during that tumultuous period, it was because it was so the identity of the Bengali identity and the love for the Bangla language became more important than the religious identity. And it also
Absolutely.
brought the communities together in the fight
Yeah.
for East Pakistan becoming Bangladesh. So when the repression started happening, when the West Pakistani army, along with Jamaat, who, please don't forget, were in Bangladesh at that time, were in East Pakistan at that time, and are still and are in Bangladesh even today, where the Jamaat colluded with the West Pakistani army, the Razakars, they joined hands with the West Pakistani army, and a brutal repression of anybody who fought for the idea of Bangladesh
Right.
started. But there is this term that has been used, selective genocide. Of course, there were many Muslims who were tortured and killed
Yes,
and raped,
absolutely.
but Hindus particularly were targeted. Okay, so yes, even during the birth of Bangladesh, which was midwifed by India, because India
Right.
helped with the freedom
Absolutely.
fighters to snatch their country, snatch a free country from West Pakistan. Even during that struggle, the Hindus bore the brunt,
Yes.
because the what West Pakistan wanted, which is now Pakistan, the only Pakistan, what West Pakistan at that time wanted was to completely uproot any idea which is inimical to their sense of being, which is a very religious
Yes.
sense of being, where even
Yes.
the Bengali language was a problem. So the language, the poetry, the music, everything was a target, and also the fact that there was a syncretic culture that exists still,
Yes.
that existed, became a
They
bane.
even demeaned Rabindranath Tagore, as you mentioned in the book. They were
Yeah,
skeptical
yeah,
of,
his songs were banned, and
Bengalis
songs were banned. You couldn't.
liking Rabindranath Tagore and his music.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, even then, uh, the Hindus in Bangladesh at that time in '71, they suffered hugely. Having said that, many Muslims also were tortured, killed, raped.
Oh,
So,
absolutely, absolutely.
but this is a term that I am not using. This is a term that has been used repeatedly even by Western writers and academics. Selective genocide. There was a selective genocide of Hindus that was done at that time,
Yes, and of course, unfortunately, many Muslims, also died for no reason at all. Maybe just because of the
except
fact
love
that
for the
it's
language.
a, it's for the
Yes.
language. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So coming to, as you mentioned about the Westerners, so it is quite often, as mentioned in Gary J. Bass' book also, The Blood Telegram,
Yes.
the role of
The
the
blood
West.
trafficking.
And
Yes.
right, and while Pakistan was of course responsible, but I think this was one instance wherein the hypocrisy of the West was very much visible,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
because
absolutely.
they were, they could have controlled it, they could have controlled it better, they could have avoided this genocide and all. But as we all know, which you mentioned in the book about Gary West's book, the West,
Yes.
America in particular, just let all the things happen and let people die
Yes.
and anything. How do you
Yes.
see the role of West in this particular case, as well as in the religious conflicts in general, especially in Asian region?
See, the West's role in Bangladesh, in East Pakistan then, and in Bangladesh now, like in the year 2023, just before the election, is very suspect. In fact, I wrote a opinion piece that is America wanting an Arab Spring in Bangladesh, because
Right.
democracy is a work in progress. Even in America, I mean, you don't have a democratic system that is perfect. You saw what happened in the last American election, the Capitol Hill
True.
riots and all that. So America
True.
should not be lecturing other countries about democracy.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
not perfect. It's not perfect in the Indian subcontinent. It's a work in progress. We can argue from our standpoint that it's far better in India than it is, say, definitely in Pakistan and also in Bangladesh. But who are you siding with? If you are saying that, I'll talk about 2023. If you are uh, putting sanctions on various government officials, on journalists, on members of the security forces, saying that you have to hold. Firstly, who are you to put sanctions on anybody in a sovereign
Right.
country? For a free and fair election, it's their deal. India is not telling Bangladesh to hold. India. We are strategic partners, and the Modi government and the Hasina government are on very friendly terms. I mean, India is not telling Bangladesh how to conduct elections. That's for
Exactly.
them to decide.
Exactly.
So to officially put sanctions on people who they think are are holding back free and fair elections in Bangladesh, to talking to their newspaper reports in local media, to talking to Jamaat, talking to BNP. I mean, if your aim is to hold free and fair elections, you can't be talking to forces that are anti-democratic by definition.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's hypocrisy of the highest order. So I don't know what their game plan is, but you can write editorials, and that's all very fine. There should be criticism,
True.
but you can't, to strengthen democracy, you can't be supping with completely anti-democratic forces. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
just bizarre. So I think that's what America did in 2023. Now imagine 1971. They did not even want Bangladesh to be born,
True.
and they were extremely angry So there was this concert that was held with Ravi Shankar and George Harrison. And
Yeah.
American administration was very, very angry that why was this concert even held?
Yes.
The concert was held to just focus attention to the genocide that was happening in East Pakistan.
Genocide. Some again
And
you talked in detail about in your book that how the
yes,
U.S. administration was.
yes. So US has been US has its own games to play in Bangladesh,
Exactly.
but those games do not help. Coming back to the book and our topic today, those games do not help the Hindus in Bangladesh or democracy. Uh,
Absolutely.
so I don't know why those games are played still in 2023.
So it happened in 1971. Bangladesh was created. We talked about Noakhali riots in 1946 as well. Even if we
Yeah,
take the period from the creation of Bangladesh, why is it that it took 50 plus years or maybe 45 plus years for Gary Bass to emerge and talk about what happened in 1971? What was the genocide about? Why it took 70 years for someone like you, the Deep Halder, to come and talk about what's the situation of Hindus in Bangladesh? Why you think over all these decades these issues, these massacres did not really make news? We Indians had a very little understanding of Bangladesh creation earlier, that okay, India helped create Bangladesh. There was some military army thing went on and Sam Manik Shaw was leading.
yeah.
Why our knowledge, or you can say globally, it was not a very well known incident?
I was saying this at my book launch in Delhi when this book came out, that there seems to be in the media industry, in the publishing industry, especially the English language media and publishing industry, a caste system of truths. There are some truths uh, which are truer than other truths, and which it's very
Yes,
weird. So I mean, you and that politics is played out everywhere. That politics is played out even in the literature festivals. If you see what kind of
true,
books are now, I am a votary of all kinds of books. I feel that don't ban any book. If I don't like your
absolutely.
show or I don't like a book, I'll criticize it. I'll read it and I'll put out a post or write a column about it. But I will never stop anybody from writing anything. I don't believe that
True.
anything, any creative endeavor should be stopped. You should do, like, talking about something else, like the film Animal. I mean, it's the film was made, right? You may like it, you may not like it. If you don't
Not
like
like
it,
it.
but you can't. I don't stand with those who said that this film cannot be made. Why cannot this film be made? You make a better film, or you put out a criticism saying, look, these are very problematic aspects of the film which I don't agree with, which is absolutely okay. But it's not a fair world. So there is a caste system of truths where somehow talking about uh, genocides, massacres, attacks, riots against Hindus in a Hindu majority country was somehow not palatable in the English
Yes,
speaking circles. Now, I don't want to sound political, but it's a truism. Sanjeev Sanyal, Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, who's we all know Sanjeev, and he's been extremely generous with my books and with me. He's guided me and all that. But I remember Sanjeev telling me when my first book came out at the book launch that he knew about the Marichapi massacre, and when he went to various book fests, and he attempted to even speak about Marichapi massacre, people from the audience would shout him down,
yeah,
but it's something that took place. So why can I not talk about it, right? You may
absolutely.
have a different view on why it happened. You may contest the numbers of the victims. All that is fine. Those criticisms should come your way, but why can you not talk about it? It's something that happened.
Absolutely.
But it is still, even with my book, I don't want to sort of make this a platform to sort of to put out grouses. I don't have any, but even you see that there is a in every circle there is that there will be people and places which would not welcome such books.
Absolutely.
And it exists in this day. Forget Bangladesh, it exists to this day in Modi's India. If you call it
True.
Modi's India,
True.
and it says
And I think the Kashmir files, when it came out, met with a similar response, with many people saying that it's this
yes,
is
I
to
mean, I
uh,
my thing about Kashmir files is you please dissect it cinematically. You please criticize it,
exactly.
but to say that the film cannot be, or I mean, this is bizarre. I mean, it's the same kind of criticism, for instance, that say Salman Rushdie faced when he wrote
Yes,
the satanic verses, and look what happened to him so recently. The poor
only
man lost an
recently.
eye.
True.
And if you remember, in Jaipur Literature Festival of all places in India, when he was supposed to come and deliver a speech, he was stopped. So through video conference, do you remember this? He was supposed to deliver a lecture
Yes.
at Jaipur Literature
Yes.
Festival, and then
Was yeah,
people,
yeah.
and then the government, this local government said, no, you cannot come because there's a law and order. There might be a law and order situation, and we won't be able to handle it. So it was
Right.
cancelled, and then he spoke through video conferencing. It's bizarre. Taslima Nasreen cannot speak in various parts of India. I mean, she's in
Yes.
Delhi, but she can't speak in various parts of India. India, I mean, Bangladesh, I understand she can't go back,
Right.
perhaps, but in India also she can't speak at various places. She's
I
not
think same thing
invited.
happened with the late Tariq Fateh. He visited, I think, JNU, and he was manhandled because many people did not subscribe to his viewpoint. And yeah, someone like him was also manhandled at, I think it was JNU, and which was
Yes.
again, as you said, bizarre. I mean, you may disagree with him what he says, but that doesn't mean that we
Yeah, absolutely.
this thing
See,
happened.
if I'm abusing you, of if I'm sort of writing something which is blasphemous, which is directly
Right.
hurting your religious sentiment, then yeah, I can still understand. But if I'm writing something which you may disagree with, but which is according to me based on facts, and where I put out the facts, I put out the
Right.
references, you can still disagree with me, but do it in a civil manner. Why do you take recourse
Absolutely.
to violence? Why do you introduce cancel culture? Why do you
Right.
have this hush thing about, okay, this book will be shadow banned, or this
Right.
writer will not be invited to speak? It's bizarre. I mean, it shows that you are not ready to engage in a conversation.
In the
But what
conversation.
you asked, I think there is a caste system of truths. I mean, some truths are more, perhaps more palatable to certain sections of the.
Absolutely.
I'd go to the extent of saying to the English speaking crowd in our country than certain other truths. Certain truths are
Oh, no.
just, there have been, the book has been well received. I'm very thankful to everybody who's reviewed the book. There are people who have messaged me and sort of, pinged me, and who have said that I love the book so much that these are the places where I regularly review books.
Right.
And I wrote a review, and then I sort of sent it to the whoever, the book's editor or the editor of the
Right.
whatever, the magazine, the paper,
Absolutely.
the portal.
I I
And they have
remember
said
in
that
the recent
this.
book launch. Sorry, you please continue.
So, and then they have been told, sorry, we won't carry the review of this book. So those things happen.
Okay.
And so I have thanked them for sort of, for attempting this as a friend and a well wisher. But I laugh those things off. But there are people who are perhaps doing great work, and they do not have the platforms that I have, who are not being
Right.
called by books wale bhaiya, and or whatever. The last time we met at the Delhi University Lit Fest. So these are, so
Yes.
I'm very privileged. So I should not have any grouse. But I'm saying, even for somebody like me who's had more than 2 decades in journalism, who has been an editor in Delhi for so long, and who's writing the third book. First two books were taken well. This book also did well. Even if it can happen to me, imagine others who want to write books, and who want
Right.
to write those, about those truths which are lower down in the caste order.
Lower
I
down.
mean, caste is
True.
a
True. Very
the
true.
sad reality, but there is, I
Absolutely.
think, caste not just in society, but also in various kind of truths we say.
Exactly. Many times it's just the power of narratives. Which narrative is
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I
more
think,
dominant, and
yes,
things
in
work
prominent
accordingly.
literature festivals, I think they have, say, 10%. Okay, there is a 10% quota for the other kind of
Uh,
narrative. So
those
we
who do
will
not
only take
subscribe to
that
your
10%. So
ideology,
to
so
look very objective and
absolutely.
all of that. Yeah.
That's very true. I remember in the recent book launch of Indol Sen Gupta's latest book. So Sanjeev sir was was one of the panelists. He launched the book, and he said that I see a lot of optimism in the sense that what we are saying, people are hearing, people are going to attend the book launch. Interestingly, we are talking a book on political Hinduism in India International Center, something which
Yeah.
was unimaginable, say 10, 15 years back, that a book
Yes.
of this sort would be launched, and that too at India National Center. So yes, things there that were definitely changing, but as you are right, there's a cancel culture is still there. The English speaking class still things in a different way. Things, it's still some 15 years back period wherein what their narrative dominated the public discourse. So definitely
Yeah.
things are changing, but yes, some things are definitely same. Coming back to your book, as you have traveled to Bangladesh a couple of times, you are being a Bengali. Uh, when you meet say a common man in Bangladesh, and as you have given instances wherein many times the Muslim have helped or supported Hindus, they have not succumbed
Yes,
to any extreme ideology. How do
yes.
you see Bangladesh if we see it from a common man's perspective, not the politician but the common man's perspective?
It's a very, very difficult question to answer, Abhishek. I mean, depends who the common man is. I would like to believe,
Right.
you know, there is hard data. The hard data tells you that the Hindu population has come down drastically from when India was partitioned and it became, East Pakistan to now. Okay, now it's at 7.9%, which is way less than what it was
Yes.
at that time. There is also data that shows that during every time Army League is in power, the attacks on Hindus are far lesser than when
Or
some other
lesser.
forces and political parties are in power. Like 2001 is a standout year where horrific massacres against Hindus took place across Bangladesh when
Yes.
the BNP and the Jamaat together came to power.
Yes.
Uh, I meet various kinds of people. There are a lot of friends who happen to be Muslims in Dhaka and outside Dhaka who are very enthusiastic, for instance, about Durga Puja, because I have been going to during Durga Puja time. Last 2 3 years, I'm in Dhaka, Dhaka and across Bangladesh.
Right.
Not just Dhaka, there are I also take pictures with my phone. There are Muslim women, sometimes clad in burqa, who are sitting on plastic chairs outside a pandal, very sort of in a very participatory way, looking on at the puja that's happening. They're not participating in the puja, but they take it as something
It
that's
is
very natural.
enthusiastic about it. What's
Yeah, very
happening?
enthusiastic about it. They're looking. I have met people who are Muslims, who happen to be Muslims, village Muslims, well-to-do, okay, and they have donated for Durga Puja Pandal, right? So, like I keep saying, it's the gaze, it's what you go to see. But
Right.
so all those things happen, all those things are there. Inside Dhaka University campus, Saraswati Puja is held in a huge way. It's 14th
Oh,
February
nice.
this year. Okay, and I already have invitation. There is invitation mail sent to me from Dhaka University students. In fact, I'll tell you this story. I met this young Muslim student in Dhaka University who had done the design of the pandal
Oh, wonderful.
last year of the Saraswati Puja pandal. Okay, inside Dhaka University last year, because one of his Hindu friends who was very actively involved in the puja committee had died,
Okay.
uh, natural death, but had died tragically, you know. And he said that just to honor his memory, and I was, and he's also an artist. He said I was part of the team that did the design of the pandal. It's a fantastic story. So when you say what does the common man feel, there are also people who are now friends, people who are deeply saddened, enraged, and fearful of the course their society, at least parts of their society, are taking in Bangladesh. In fact, a very good friend of mine, Shahidul Hassan Kokon, he's a journalist, he told me that if the other idea of Bangladesh were to come to the fore, forget what will happen to Hindus. I fear what will happen to Muslims like me. So there is a section, and it's not a small section of Bangladeshis, Muslim Bangladeshis, who are aware of the threat from within.
Right.
But there is hard data to say that this is not enough.
Right.
There is a groundswell that is growing, which is not good news at all. Having
So
said
that
that,
that minority within Bangladesh, which really believes in harmony and respect for the minorities which are Hindus there, but as you said, they may not be sufficient enough to make a change, and
yes,
we are not sure how exactly the
it's going to
future
play
will
out in
be.
the
But
coming days. See, two ideas of Bangladesh. Like I said, it was
right,
Pakistan. In
right,
1947, it was Pakistan. In 1971, it became Bangladesh. Now, did it
right,
stop? Did sections of the society stop being Pakistan? Why was Pakistan born? Separate homeland for Muslims, right? Pakistan, Pak means pure. So Pakistan literally means the land of the
the
pure.
land of the pure. Yeah.
and East Pakistan and West Pakistan, same country. So there's 1947, there's 1971. Did magically everything change in that tract of land which we called East Pakistan then, and which we are calling Bangladesh now, with the birth of with the renaming in a sense, with the disengagement with West Pakistan and the renaming and the sort of the sovereign status of another country. It's a new government. It's a series of new governments. There are sort of including military dictatorships, and of course it took a different course strategically. It's very close to India now as it was then. In between there might have been tension of on and off, but did 1947 vanish from the society? Forget the politics. Maybe not. So, and that's the
Maybe
threat. And also uh, growing Islamic fundamentalism. This is something their Home Minister Asaduzzaman Khan, who I got the opportunity to interview several times, he told me, he used the word Islamic terror. It is something. Forget Hindus, even Muslim Bangladeshis have to deal with. There have been terror attacks inside Bangladesh where not Hindus, but people who do not quote unquote subscribe to the Islamic way of life, according to the fundamentalists who terrorists who carried out the attacks, they were targeted.
right.
So the Holy Artisan attack, for instance, we recently an Indian film was made
Right.
for Netflix. I think it's a horrific attack, and that shook up the very societal foundations of Bangladesh. That kids from middle class families were so radicalized that they
Right.
went in and killed people inside a bakery, so restaurant. So I think those are very tough questions. So the syncretic culture. See, if I go as a foreigner, I mean, I go there often. I go as a foreigner. So, but within there are elements within which are very bad news
Right.
uh, for Hindus in particular, for the future of Bangladesh, also for India, because we cannot afford to lose Bangladesh.
Of
We
course. Of
already
course.
have uh, imperfect neighbors, so we can't
Right.
afford to have Bangladesh, being inimical to us.
No, no, that's very true. But when we talk of Pakistan, we also talk of China, and the influence of China, and of course, in some way or the other, of Western countries. So our
Yes.
relation with Pakistan is often looked at in the context of that. So if you look at from the point of view of geopolitics, like globally, do you think these geopolitical tensions also affect in any way our relations with Bangladesh?
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you have the China
Bangladesh.
factor in,
Yeah, yeah, every kind of force are at play in Bangladesh, even today.
right?
So, but I think the Modi government should be credited for sort of improving relations with Bangladesh. We have
Absolutely.
great relations, and I see that when I go to Dhaka, and not just in the diplomatic circles, in every sphere of the government. There's great relations, and which is what sustaining sort of. I mean, in a sense, there, in a large sense. The idea of Bangladesh that was, I mean, also Sheikh Hasina. I mean, she's a boon to the idea of democracy, the idea of secularism that still exists in Bangladesh today. Because after Hasina, not who, but the question is, after Hasina, what?
What?
Uh, yeah. So I mean, what? There is no leader who can match her stature, who can match her idea of pluralism, idea of sort of, she's the last recourse for Hindus. You ask any Hindus that who they will vote for, they'll say Army League. I mean, there are Hindu leaders in other parties also, including BNP, but generally, I mean, randomly you ask a Hindu anywhere in Bangladesh who will they vote for, there might be anti-incumbency against Hasina, but they'll say we'll vote for Army League.
Right. And as you mentioned that, her credentials in terms of, protecting minorities is far better than that of other parties. So our next question is
Yes,
actually
it
related
is.
to
Down,
that.
down.
We, Sheikh Hasina got another term, and
Yes,
but of course, there will come a post Sheikh Hasina era in
yes,
Bangladesh. You talked about Sheikh Hasina's credentials. You talked about many people still, respecting Hindu sentiments. One of the YouTubers, the famous YouTuber, you said he even
yes.
made videos on Durga Puja and all. Given all this, how do you see the future? Are you pessimistic, or you optimistic, or are you somewhere in between for Hindu society and for that matter Bangladesh in general?
I'm a pessimist. I'd like to believe, maybe because I'm sentimentally so attached to Bangladesh. Because like I said, that's that. I mean, it was East Bengal then. It was not another country. It was the same
Yeah,
country. But both sides of the family, my parents' family, my mother's side, my father's side, they came from there. I
right.
keep going there, and I have great friends. So I am optimistic, but I have been chastened by my friends in Delhi, and who have just told me that look at the hard data, man. I mean,
Right.
look at all these instances. But I think I don't know really. I think I'd like to believe. See, it's not. Of course, there's the question of the Hindus in Bangladesh, and 7.9% is also a huge percent.
Yes.
So but not just for Hindus in Bangladesh, for the idea of Bangladesh.
The idea of Bangladesh.
Hindus in Bangladesh is one prism, but for the idea of Bangladesh, I hope this idea is sustained beyond Sheikh Hasina. At some point, she may
Right.
want to step down, and somebody else would take over. As it will happen in every country, and every leader, no matter how popular, will one day step down. But I hope the idea of Bangladesh sustains for Bangladesh's sake, not
Right.
just for Hindus, because it's a wonderful idea that in 71 people rose above their religious identity to have a identity based on language and culture, and decided to break away from West Pakistan and form a country of their own. I mean, helped hugely by India. I mean, I mean, it was there was a lot of blood was spilled, horrific massacre after massacre took place during that time. But in the end, it was a beautiful idea that took shape.
True.
I hope that idea sustains.
So one last question about this book, and I'll ask one on Mari Jhappi, and then I think we can finish the session. So, how easy or difficult was it for you to, do this research and oral history, recording histories and all from people in Bangladesh? Because your book is to a good extent is based on the oral history as well of people,
Yes, yes,
people
yes.
telling their stories.
This
So,
was
how
a
easy
very
or
difficult,
difficult you found it in
right.
Bangladesh?
This was a very difficult book to write. Also because I was writing with Abhishek Biswas, okay, and I was privileged because by the time I was born, my parents had established themselves. My father was a professor, my mother was a banker. There was a lot of privilege. I grew up in, but Abhishek actually felt the brunt of the of being a refugee, of being born to refugee parents. In fact, when I we started from there because I went to his old house, which is just outside Kolkata, and open drains. And though there are pakka houses now, the stink of an open drain is still there. Okay, there is a huge open dump yard for garbage, and you can make out that. And it was very different when he was a child and he was growing up, and he faced a lot of hardship. It's his amazing sort of academic prowess and his will that he overcame all that and established himself, and
Right,
he's now an academic. So we
right,
started from there. So I met his grandmother, who was a survivor of 1946 Noakhali riots. She was in Noakhali. She was a 12-year-old girl when the riots were happening. She hid inside a school when rioters were out in the street, finding Hindus to rape and kill, or convert. Uh, it's trauma. It's you know it's you'd come back and see. By the time you're on your third book, I can speak for myself. You have a structure in your head, like you do the
yes,
chapterization, you plan a chapter a certain way. Of course, then there are, when you actually go and interview people or you start writing, of course, things go a little here and there, you improvise and all of that, but you have a structure in head. So I keep going back to the structure. Okay, okay, no, this is and not try to take it in. I was
right,
sitting across a, 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 a lady called Punima Sheel, who was also 13 years old in 2001 when she was gang raped for being a worker of the ruling party, Army League. At that time, Army League lost and BNP came to power, and
yes,
she was gang raped inside her house. And she was telling me that what you're seeing, the woman you're seeing in front of you is a ghost because I died that day. and I'm sitting there and looking at her, and I don't know where to look, like, and she's just facing me. I'm seeing her in person, and she's detailing out what happened to her, and her life after. So when you see that, when you hear that from up close and not over the phone, and when you actually go there and you see sort of broken idols, and because those things also happened. I was in Bangladesh, even during the course of my writing my books, when some attacks took place. So I visited the spot and saw idols, broken idols on the floor. It's very traumatic, very, very, very traumatic. So the second book was an easier book to write, because it's just looking at the issues that Bengal faces, and trying to figure out the various political forces that played during the 2021 assembly elections in Bengal. But the first book, Marijhapi, and but more so this book, because there was also the force of nostalgia that was coming in. That this is
Right.
where this is my origin story. I mean, this is where my
Understood.
parents came from. This is where my father went to school, my mother went to school before it all went haywire. So it was a
Right.
very, very, very tough book to write. Extremely tough. I mean, after that, I'm like off books. I mean, the process of writing books completely.
So, well, this is it for the being Hindu in Bangladesh. One question to the Marij Happy massacre.
Yeah.
If you could tell very briefly about what it was, because as I said before your book, hardly anyone knew about it, and even today, people have very less information. And secondly, I wanted to know your opinion on this thing happened to Hindus, to Dalits in India by
Yes.
Indians, and it's
Yes.
not
By
that
Indians.
someone from Pakistan came or out of some communal passion or anything, because Hindus
Yes.
being killed by members of the CPM, who themselves many of them were Hindus. So how do you
Yes.
see this phenomenon?
Okay, so bare facts. Unlike the partition in the western part of the country, in Punjab, the partition in the east, for some reason, was less talked about, but it was more
Yes,
horrific, because
yes,
there the partition happened only in 1947.
yeah,
Okay, few months, maybe you can stretch it to a year max, but mostly a few months. Here it happened over decades. The migration of Hindus did not stop with 1947. Continued to happen. One of the reasons was that a large section of lower caste Hindus stayed back, because they had a leader whose name is Jogendranath Mondal, who I mentioned about, who
right,
told his constituency, and he ditched Nehru Gandhi's Congress for Jinnah's Muslim League. And
yes,
he said that he told his fellow Dalits that, look, the upper caste Hindu, have traditionally discriminated against both the Muslim and us. So Muslims are our
right,
brothers. Let us stay back. This is our country. Okay, but with the birth of East Pakistan, he saw that, and he was made the Law and Labor Minister. So
yes.
the
In
first
in
law and
Jinnah
in
government, yes,
independent Pakistan was
yes,
a Bengali Dalit Hindu with the name of Jogendranath Mondal. A lot of people have forgotten him today. He's sort of fallen off the map. Uh, so he told Dalit Hindus that please stay back and this is our country. But when riots started happening against Dalit Hindus, because when the riots happened, they were not Dalit Hindus anymore; they were just Hindus, right? And their land was grabbed, and all of that was happening. He resigned, and he came to West
him,
Bengal, right? And where he tried to be in politics again, but he failed, and then he died unsung. But a lot of the Dalit Hindus had stayed back, okay, believing this man.
yes,
Now also because they're very rooted. They were fisher folk, and they were sort of farmers and all of that. So it was easier for the landowning class or the educated class to move from one place to another, because they could re-establish themselves in a new land. But for them, they were so rooted to their land. So waves of migration started happening after 1947 also. And so the first wave of migration that happened was the migration of families like my family, upper caste, broadly, some lower caste, but privileged Hindus who moved from that side to this side. Subsequent, if you look at the caste dynamic of migrations post the 40s, 50s, 60s, you will see a lot of lower caste Hindus were coming to West Bengal. Now it was very
yes,
difficult for West Bengal to keep those many Hindus. So
Right.
there were appeals to sort of the central government, and Nehru famously, if you remember, had said that they should not be encouraged to come.
Yes.
And the then Congress chief minister of West Bengal, Bidhan Chandra Roy, had argued with Nehru and said that they need shelter. So anyway, eventually there was this plan to rehabilitate them in Dandakarana area, central India, and in various kinds of governmental projects like building roads, etc. Now they were not happy because this is a central India is not a place whose terrain they are familiar with, whose native language they are familiar with. They wanted West Bengal, for
Yes.
multi-alluvial soil and rivers to fish in and all of that. Now, interestingly, the left was in opposition at that time. So when they were being sent away from refugee camps in West Bengal to Dandakaranna, left leaders went to them and said, "This is a grave injustice that's happening to you. So when we come to power, we'll bring you back to West Bengal." Now they
Yes.
remembered it. So they remembered it through decades. Like they had gone there. Then initially the refugee camps were like tents. Then they stayed there. They made money. One of the places is Mana Camp in Chhattisgarh, just outside the airport at Raipur. It's still called Mana Camp. You can go there and you'll see this colony of Pakka houses, but it's still called Mana Camp. Okay, the signboard will still says Mana Camp. So Mana Camp was one of the biggest camps there in that for these refugees. But they remembered even though tents became makeshift, camps became Pakka houses, and they had established themselves, got married, had kids, and all of that. They remembered that the left had promised that when they come to power, we will be shifted back. So a chunk of them, when the left came to power in West Bengal in 1977, a chunk of them were, now there's a dispute on this. Some say that a left leader had, in fact, before the left came to power, taken them to Sundarbans, to this island Marichapi, and identified this island that, okay, this is one island where some of you can come and stay. But once the left came to power, and they expected the left to do something about rehabilitating them in West Bengal, the left completely ignored them. So these were also men who were very hardworking, men and women who were extremely hardworking, and also extremely aggressive in getting what they wanted. So because the whole experience of this much hardship from one country to another, from one state to West Bengal to central India. So they said, "Oh, so what, left is not left, government is helping us, not helping us. We will on our own, through money saved, go to
Yes.
this island in Sundarbans, and we will, because there's
Settle.
nothing there. It's an uninhabited island, so we will set up a settlement there."
Right.
So they were blocked when they were coming in trains from central India to stations in West Bengal. They were stopped. If they were identified, they were stopped. Some were sent back by the Bengal police, but still a large number of them managed to reach this island. Okay, and then started something which is a brilliant experiment, which I think is a book on its own. So over a period of 6 to 8 months, they built. There were shrubs in that island, not trees. There were shrubs in the island. Cleared the shrubs, and they built a township. Can you imagine? There were like lanes, and there was a school, and there was a boat manufacturing yard. There was a bidi making factory. So they created over a period of 6 8 months a bustling township. Right now, the left was in power, and Jyoti Basu was the chief minister. Didn't like it one bit. So
Right.
officially, they said that this is breaking a number of environmental laws, and you have
Yes.
settled here illegally. So I'm just giving you the bare facts, and there are stories around all of this, but these are the bare facts. So you're settled here, you're breaking illegally, you have broken various environmental laws. I mean, environmental laws in 1970, 78, 77, 78. I mean, imagine 78. So you should go back. So they said no. We didn't take any governmental support. This land was lying. Island was barren. We have come here. We have cleared it. We have put our money. We have taken some help from well wishers. Why will we go back? So they first did an economic blockade. The island did not have drinking water. So the next island is a place called Kumirmari. It's still there. So they would take their boats and go to the island, and through pitchers they would bring back drinking water for the day. So they did not have access to drinking water, and this continued for 15 days. And in that, they drank the river water, the saline river water, and a lot of kids and older people, they died through dysentery, and others felt horribly
Okay.
sick. Yeah.
Right.
So when then a PIL was filed in the court, and the court told the government that you can't do this, you can't deny them access to basic
Right.
necessities.
To blessing this
So
is
you
right.
should take away the police launches that surround the island. You should take away the launches. So they did it, but the launches never left. And then series of attacks started taking place. One attack was on 31st January 1979, where there were policemen who were firing at the islanders from launches, and the islanders replying with bows and arrows from the shores of Morinchapi and Kumilmari. Some of them were in Kumilmari. So you can imagine the casualty. So between
Definitely.
1979 January, but still they did not leave. But between
Yeah.
January 1979 and May 1979, there were this series of incidents that started taking place. Now this is where my oral account and the left's version differ.
Different.
They say that all this is mangadit kanya, and this all this didn't happen. But
The
whoever,
estimate of casualties also differ widely. I think left
yeah,
says it's
wildly.
two
They
or
say that,
yeah,
yeah. So the number goes up to a couple of thousand, and the
couple of
left, I
thousands.
think
Yes.
left says something like 8 people died. Of them, 4 were policemen. So they basically talk about 31st January. But then there were rapes that happened. There were stories, and these are stories from survivors. See,
Right.
I, I was not there to see it happening. So the way I wrote the book is not through any other means, but I took recourse to the oral history narrative to sort of tell the story. So I actually found out survivors who were in that island, which is why it pissed off certain people a lot when Blood Island came out, because this is not theory anymore. This is interviews. Every chapter is the interview of a survivor, right? So, and they're not huddled together. Like some of them have gone back to Chhattisgarh, some are in
Yeah.
Sundarban, some are in various parts. So they can't all be lying and saying similar things. So
Absolutely.
there were women were taken away, they were raped, and then they were sent back so that they can, the fear factor sort of is pushed into the minds of the islanders. And then finally they came in the night, and they set all those huts on fire.
Okay.
People were burned, people died, a lot of people died. There were charred bodies, and there was this Shukaranjan Sengupta, great journalist, is sadly no more. He and I interviewed him, and he found this old woman with charred breasts, and he, so she's takes off her pallu and shows him the breasts, and he cries and touches her feet. So I got an opportunity to make Shukaranjan Sengupta, and he went to meet these women and other victims of that horrific night when all the huts were set on fire. And so then they were forcibly pushed away to Dandakarana region again. Now, in between January and May 1979, there were people who vanished from the island and found shelter here and there. I've met those people, many of those people, and their accounts are the same, because they would all obviously keep a track of what's happening, because they're in Bengal, so they could keep a track of
Right.
what's happening in the Sundarbans. The island was then cleared off. All huts were the entire township that was built was cleared off. It's as if nothing existed there, and all islanders were sent away. So that's the massacre. Now,
I think what is horrifying is not just the massacre, but the fact that no
in
one, hardly
independent
anyone
India,
knew
you
about
do
it.
this to your own people.
Exactly.
So I mean, yeah, so that's what happened. And then there was this silence that, in fact, an
Hmm.
academic, and he's in no way. In fact, I was speaking to him this morning for a story, and he's no way a quote unquote right wing academic, or I mean, I don't know, I don't even know what his politics is, but he has he doesn't sound typically right. He has spent 20 years in Sundarbans to study the environment. He's an environmentalist, and he also teaches. So he said he had heard of the Morichapi massacre, and he says every bit of what you wrote in Blood Island is true. In fact, it's worse. He says that if you stay,
Yes.
so I didn't, of course, stay in Sundarbans for 20 years. I took 5 years to write the book, and I kept going to Sundarbans on and off. But yeah, so what you were saying, that the fact that this could be done in 1978, 79, boss, imagine. I mean, and it's what is amazing is that of course it was talked about in academic circles, and there were some books that came out, novels in the form of novellas, etc., which quickly vanished from the market. Books written
Right.
in Bengali by people who are from there. But yeah, when Blood Island came out, I mean, people, it's as if nobody knew, even in a lot of
Exactly.
people in Bengal, that this has happened. So that's
In a
amazing.
sense, it took almost 40 years for people to actually know the truth.
Yes,
And when your book came out, and this is the time where I would say a large chunk of people actually read the book,
yes,
going by the reviews and the coverage it got.
yes. But it was in people's memories, because when even
Yes.
when some of the reviewers, they were talking to me, they said, we knew this had happened. Of course, Amitav Ghosh has fictionalized it in his book, The Hungry Tide. So he
Yes.
mentions it more in chapter, but the point is, it's a work of fiction. So
Tobacco
you
fiction.
don't take a take a chapter from a love story, or from,
Right.
and bring it into an academic discussion, really. So but this was oral history, and this was survivors with the pictures. In fact, one of the most vocal survivors, somebody who said unspeakable things against Jyoti Basu, is currently a Trinamool Congress MLA. So
Ah, that's
yeah,
interesting.
Subramanian
Yeah.
Bapri, yeah, yeah. So he said, I mentioned it in the book. In fact, I wanted to make it the chapter title, but my publisher said, no, it's too, it'll get us
Okay.
into legal trouble. You can't say this. So he called Jyoti Basu all kinds of names. So yeah, he's currently a Trinamool Congress MLA, and he said what he said. He said he was there and he saw it happening.
Well, yeah, let's just hope that things like these do not get repeated. And
Yeah.
coming to Bangladesh, before we finish it off, yes, let's hope that we have a better and rich Bangladesh in the future for the sake of both Bangladesh
Yes.
and India. As I said, the idea of Bangladesh should survive.
Yes. 1971 Bangladesh. Bangladesh
Absolutely.
should never forget 1971. Why
Yes.
they chose not to be East Pakistan anymore.
Exactly. So, well, we will let's finish it off. So, all those who will watch this on YouTube, well, I strongly recommend this book. I strongly recommend, in fact, every book written by Deep. So, all those interested in knowing, our real history should definitely buy and read this book. So, Deep, thank you very much for your
Thank
time.
you,
It
Abhishek.
was pleasure interacting with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and all
Thank
the
you so
best
much.
for your upcoming books. And I'm
Thank,
eagerly waiting for whenever you write your next book.
thank you.